before you, we return what was given us from the ashes of our life, Easter our hopes. Warm us with the fire, burn away our sins, and bring us to life everlasting. Burned palms before, so I had him help me burn palms. I still have a picture of him with the flames on that, and he singed his eyebrows and was ready to send me as chaplain to a dog pound in North Dakota for the rest of my natural life. I explained to him, in order for him to make that assignment stick, he'd have to explain how it was he was a bishop of the ELCA and had never before burned palms. So I stayed in Utah. I figured that was just desserts. There is also a legend that predates the burning of palms, but it's part of what some of you are familiar with Joseph Campbell, the power of myth and all of those things. There are standard stories, images that exist among featherless bipeds. One, for those of you who don't know it any other way, know it from the most recent Henry Potter movie.
Oh, Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. I call him Henry Potter.
Yeah. Henry Potter is a villain, but it's a wonderful life.
There you go. I like that even better.
That's right.
What was it? The Prisoner of
Azkaban.
There's a bird in there. The Phoenix.
Yes.
The legend of the Phoenix is a bird who goes into ashes and is reburned. That's part, that image, not of Henry Potter or Harold Potter or Heinz, never mind. The idea of beginning, ending, and from death comes life. What was handed out green and fresh last year, that graces our homes for a year, now comes from our homes back to where we got them. And now they get burned. And it took me a while. When I grew up in a Lutheran church in Berwick, or Berwick, Pennsylvania, as the indigenous natives call it, we had communion 7 times a year, need it or not. People were very concerned about being Catholic. That's spelled with a K. Now, what was hilarious to me about that is here were these Lutherans in Berwick, Pennsylvania, who wanted to make sure they weren't fish eaters, doing communion 7 times a year. Guess what? 7 times a year they did it.
7 holy days of obligation.
The 7 days of obligation in the Roman Catholic Church. You become what you fear upon occasion. And we had grape juice, and it appeared from the side of a wall, pre-filled. So the idea of actually seeing how these things began in its most ancient form has only been in the last 20, 30 years been recovered. The analogy that I can think of that we're aware of, not in the church, but it's so, you will remember, some of you are of an age to remember this, when the thoroughly modern woman had to feed her baby with glass, sterilized, and the milk from cows. And then people got the idea, wait, that's about as natural as Formica, and went back to a much nicer container. Well, so it is in the church that for a while, again, the parish that I grew up in, you know how they did the altar lights, the altar candles? Click. Click. Because it was part of a time where pious people wanted the best. God bless them for that, but in the process they got a little overboard. And electric was the way to go. In the entire ritual and things of the church, the only part that you see that is purely decoration were the candles. People didn't use candles for light. Candles were for decoration. These candles are a strange combination of the very old and the very new. Look like candles, right? They're the ancient. They're oil. They're oil candles. And that's what originally was used in churches for light. In churches for Lent, all crosses are to be covered, with one exception, crucifix. Crucifixes are not draped. So every cross in this church is draped except one. That's crucifix, that's not draped ever.
Yeah, the one on top. The one on top, you can't
The one on
reach it.
top. And there's a reason why it's not draped. It's a very good reason. Would anyone care to guess the theological, liturgical reason? We can't get to it! And no one particularly notices because it's in the back. It's a beautiful thing, but people don't see it. And if anyone is very much interested in wanting to be prim and proper and make sure that it's draped with purple, there is a liturgical gesture that goes with that, and it is...
Do it yourself?
Away you go. Other questions or anything about Lent before we burn, pray, and leave? Yo. Yes. Yes.
Larry,
Wouldn't be without.
We still have a couple of people downstairs that are on their way up. If you
Oh,
wanna
okay.
hold on.
So I'll stall.
tell us another story.
Yeah, well, you got to help me a little bit on
Don't
that.
stop from dancing.
Right, I mean, it's tension came our shop. The architecture of a building. The architecture of this building is laid out after a Gothic cathedral, which is designed to encourage the pietistic patterns of pigeons. Which means if you fly overhead, you've got the shape of a cross. Classically, in this cathedral shape, a cross layout, the altar would be here. And immediately above is where the tower, the rotunda, the dome would be. Choir behind, side altars, transepts. What happens here is a variation of the cathedral in terms of the cross and a regular rectangle with the altar at the back. Originally, the altar in the church wasn't an altar at all. It was a table. Because if you're going to eat a meal, a table's helpful. And if you have a table, everybody gets around the table. However, for those of you with big families and Thanksgiving know, after a while, the family can outgrow the table. In which case, the table, which was open in the bottom, the chalice that was used for the communion and the sacred vessels began to be stored underneath the altar. At which point the bottom of the altar dropped in. You have what looks like a credenza. Now all of a sudden you've got an altar. It gets pushed to the back of the room. And now you have an altar that looks like any other altar. The pure Christian altar, the table altar in the center where the priest faces the people. This building, nicely designed by the way, is designed for high altar. The acoustics in here, as you can probably hear with my voice, it's a lot easier to hear me from here than from down there.
Yeah.
That's a design feature. That's to be that way. In many of the older chasubles, all the fancy stuff is on the back because that's what would be here. You see that mostly. I told you all the Hocus Pocus story. You know where that comes from. Hocus Pocus is Latin.
Hocus
Hocus-Corpus. This is my body. It's in the words of consecration. Hoc est corpus. It's a magical kind of thing. Say it fast. Hocus Pocus. That's where that comes from. And now you're able to win Final Jeopardy. I'll give you one other fascinating Final Jeopardy. What is the word for elegant travel that is an acronym from sailing?